Load of communication.
Well, Alan and I just got done with our 2 weeks of COVID because it took over 2 weeks to test positive over Christmas and all. So I hope you feel better than we felt. Ours was just like a really bad cold.
Yeah, like a really bad piece of like
Yeah.
heavy metal, like reverberating up here and like this part of your life. It's
Yeah.
good times. Everyone has to have their turn.
Yeah, this was our first time in all those years, but who would have thought we'd be going through a fourth one?
The wastewater numbers are still going up.
Yeah, I know they sound horrible.
Yeah. Well, seeing that it's 7 o'clock and that we do have a quorum, I suggest maybe we get going, particularly since I know Carol has another meeting tonight as well. So she's asked us to start early. So I think we can do that. So let me go through the process of actually starting the meeting. If I can get my notes sorted out. Good evening. This meeting of the Dover Warrant Committee is being conducted remotely in accordance with the temporary provisions of the Open Meeting Law. We are convening via video conference using the Zoom application as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, so take caution what you show on the screen, as others may be able to see it, and anything you broadcast may be captured by that recording, so be careful. To open the meeting, can I get a roll call of people present? Look here. Woody?
Present.
Peter?
Present.
Marty?
Present.
Sarah?
Present. Hi.
Jerry?
Present.
Steve?
Present.
Janet?
Present.
And I also would like to welcome Bethany Clem, who's joined us for the library presentation. Bethany, Carol has asked to go first tonight, so I hope that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bethany, and thank you, Cam.
I guess in the normal order of procedure, I should ask for citizens' comments. Do I have any? Hearing none, let's proceed. Maybe, Peter, if it's okay with you, we'll address the minutes after the presentations. Okay, Carol, so I throw the floor over to you and Jasmine.
Thank you. Is Jasmine on? I know she had.
Yes, Jasmine is on too.
She's on, okay. Sorry, on the screen, I'm not sure who's on. Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for accommodating. I actually have 2 other meetings tonight, so.
Oh, great.
Something about the second Wednesdays of the month, I guess. Anyway, thank you very much. For those who don't know me, I'm Carol Usman, Chair of the Planning Board, and Jasmine Farinacci, who is our new town planner, well, new as of September, is here as well. And we will tag team this and go over both the budget and a quick review of our submission to the selectmen this week on our potential bylaws, warrant articles. Sorry.
Right. Excellent.
Okay, great. Okay, so our budget, do you all have that, or would you like Jasmine to put it up on the screen, or has it, I know it was.
We certainly have it.
Okay. It's actually very easy.
Yeah.
We have 2 staff members. Jasmine is a full-time town planner, and we have Sue Hall, who is a longtime administrative assistant, who is part-time. So those budget dollars are just, per the HR stuff. We have a couple $1,000s in our budget to handle various legal postings that we have to do when we do public hearings and that kind of stuff in the newspaper. And basically, the big item, which we are level funding for fiscal year 25, is professional services, which for us is consulting services as we work on various zoning bylaws. As you can imagine, they're very complex. We certainly work a lot with town council as well. But on some of the more complex issues, we use consultants who work within the state with other towns and communities, and understand the best practices of whatever issue it is that we're looking to do, either as a new bylaw or as an amendment to a current bylaw. Like last year, the accessory dwelling unit bylaw was an amendment to a current bylaw, but nevertheless, it took a tremendous amount of time. So we have various initiatives going on. And again, given the complexities and the fact that we didn't have a full-time town planner until September, a lot of these we knew were going to be a two-step process over 2 years. So we really don't have much new for next year other than a $20,000 request for the master plan. So let me go over that first. So every 10 years, the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts are supposed to do master plans, which involve surveying the town, working with every single board, committee, and department to really come up with a document that can be a working document for the next decade on moving the town forward. Our last plan was done in 2012, so we're a little bit behind, and it's always a multi-year process. But our hope is to get started next year, in other words, fiscal 25 budget, in bringing a consultant on and starting to work. The first step is always to develop the questions for the survey and educate the town on what we're trying to accomplish with the survey and so on. And I think if we can get that done and those results tabulated in fiscal year 25, and then begin the process of translating them into operational aspects, then we'll be pleased with our progress. And I'm sure it'll go into fiscal year 26. In the past, it's been a combination of consultants and town planner. And obviously, Jasmine will be very, very involved in spearheading that project. So are there any questions about the Dover master plan?
I'd like to understand a little bit more about the scope of that. You say you're talking to all the town's departments and committees and so on. But what is the actual scope of the work? Does it relate very much to planning for buildings and construction and the bylaws associated with that, or
Everything.
what is
It's
the
much
actual
more. Yeah,
scope
it's
of
much
it?
more than just bylaws.
Mhm.
It's everything. So it's really a helpful tool to the Board of Selectmen, and Robin's here, so she can certainly opine on that as well. But it's supposed to be a roadmap for the issues that the townsfolk have expressed commitment to and interest in, and identifying issues so that if the Conservation Commission or the Board of Health or the COA or Park and Rec are trying to develop their own plans, multi-year plans, theoretically, they should be able to take a look at the master plan and through that information, get a better feel for how they may want to proceed at a different level of the onion. There's the current master plan is on the website. So I urge you all to take a look. It's under the planning board. And I think it would be very informative.
So are those
I guess
goals?
the fact that you and probably others don't know what it is says that we need to do a better job of making it something that doesn't collect dust and then gets pulled down off the shelf every 10 years.
Yeah, certainly. I'll take a look at that, Carol. I'm quite interested in it. But are the goals then set by the Board of Selectmen, or how do you set the desiderata, the desirable elements that you're looking
Right. So so it depends. So there are overall goals that are part of the master plan. And those are reviewed and approved by the selectmen and the planning board. We work with every department, so we would never put in there's a nice chart at the end which gives, 20, 30, 40 different things that we should all be looking at. And it defines which department, in most cases, given the way Dover's government is structured, it's multiple departments. But we identify a lead department. That's done with those departments. So there are no surprises. This is a document that brings everybody together once a decade or so to say, let's take a look at the whole town.
Okay.
Yeah, Carol, is it a fair statement to say that for the 351 cities and towns, the state is somewhat prescriptive in terms of the basic framework and design and content of a master plan for a city or town?
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, certainly the format, the general topics are the same. Obviously, the format and the depth of issues and the breadth of issues are very different for Lawrence than it is for Dover. But yes, and what we do is we don't start from scratch. We build upon the previous master plan and we just update it. For instance, I'm on the Open Space Committee as well, and the Open Space Committee is in the process of updating their open space plan. And basically, you take the previous plan, you update any data that you have, and then add new stuff to it. So it's the same process.
So I spent some time today reviewing the hazard mitigation plan, which was done, I guess, 2 years ago or year and a half ago, and strikes me as almost out of date now, given what's happened to climate change.
So the hazard mitigation plan, it's under the planning board on the website, but that was only because our previous full-time town planner was actually our land use.
No, I know. I'm just using that as an
example of, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it really realistic now to plan every 10 years, every decade?
No, I don't think so. And I think that most boards and committees are planning every year. Right. And if you look at an open space plan or the master plan, they're at a much higher level than a hazard mitigation plan or even the housing production plan. Different level of the onion. Robin, would you like to opine?
So one of the things I was going to say, and Carol, I'm going from memory here, part of the process of updating the master plan was also the survey that was sent out to the town as a whole, right? To get a sense of what citizens of Dover want Dover to look like.
That's a starting point. Yep.
Right. So it really does have input from everybody in the town. And I think it's a guide, right? Each year things have to change based upon circumstances. So, you do put this master plan in place, but you also have to be agile enough to adapt. Right now we've put together this housing task force because we're extremely concerned about the number of large acres of land that could potentially come up for development, and you have to tie into that if development is going to happen. So what kinds of development might work for the citizens of Dover? And then you have to go back and say, well, do our zoning bylaws provide for that? Should we be making changes? How can we educate the town?
Now, Woody, I'll give you an example, or everybody examples. So if you look back at the last 3 or 4 master plans, and you needed to do a bullet summary of the top 2 messages that come out of the survey that then inform the master plan and everybody else. It's what do folks in Dover value? And it's the same for the last 40 years, which is the schools and the rural ambiance. So then you take something like the rural ambiance and you say, okay, what does that mean? That has to do with zoning. It has to do with housing, as Robin just mentioned. It has to do with regulations and bylaws about trees. It happened to do with regulations and bylaws about roads. So the master plan sets that umbrella, and then you operationalize those things on an annual basis as each department and board does their work.
Okay.
Should I go on to the other 70,000?
Please
Okay,
do.
so I think you've all seen the budget narrative that went with the budget. So I'm just going to quickly summarize it. You know, we started this year with a budget of $90,000. My guess is that some portion of that will be returned to the town. The budget was put together assuming that we had a full-time town planner starting on July 1st. And instead it was September that Jasmine came on board. So there's been a delay there. Plus the housing task force is something that is taking up a little bit more time too. So we have a couple of things that we've started or we thought we were going to start that may fall into fiscal year 25. But basically, we're looking at the tree committee, which was established last year, and which I hope most of you know something about. And we are working with the DPW and Concom this year to do a stormwater bylaw, which will include some aspects of natural resource use for stormwater. Stormwater mitigation isn't just culverts and drains and that kind of stuff. There's also a natural resource aspect of it. Depending what gets into that bylaw, because we have about recommendations, or about 40 or 50 recommendations from a consultant from the year before. We expect that we'll do a bylaw in May of 2025 to handle some of the other stuff. And we will need a lot of professional support to do that. We started a village center zoning project with a couple of open hearings and a consultant last year. And in late 2022, excuse me, we hope to bring that to a regulatory step this year and a bylaw step in 2025, both requiring an awful lot of continued professional support. And our bylaws are woefully out of date. I would say that at least in the last 30 or 40 years, there has not been a comprehensive look at our bylaws. They sort of get done on a one-on-one basis. We know that they no longer reflect best practices in a whole bunch of things. And they actually have some big holes, and these are just the zoning bylaws. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We have a zoning bylaw that handles large-scale solar arrays, and that bylaw was done with tremendous support from Robin, so that we could build the solar array by the transfer station. And that's called a large-scale solar array, and large scale is defined by the state as, I can't remember what it is, let's say 250 megawatts or whatever the thing is, okay? We have absolutely nothing in our bylaws, nothing in any regulations, nothing anywhere about smaller solar arrays. But we have, for instance, this summer we had a home on Farm Street that put in the solar array that was only slightly smaller than large scale. And when we went to do our site plan review, we had absolutely no guidelines to use. And we would expect that there'll be more and more, which is a good thing, it's on a personal basis, of solar installations, not on the roof, but on some of the bigger properties. So that's something where our regulations and bylaws are silent. We have to bring in a bylaw that gives us, the planning board, some guidance, and in fact, almost as importantly, gives the residents and their service providers and contractors guidelines to use as they're planning there. So Jasmine is working on that, and we have it listed for this May. It would be great if we can do it. That's an aggressive timetable, but we'll see how it goes. If we don't get to it at this May town meeting, we'll get to it at the next town meeting. So that if you look at it, that adds up to the 70,000 of ongoing stuff, and then the $20,000 of new for the master plan.
Okay.
So that's our budget request.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions?
that, okay,
Looks like you've got raging agreement, Carol, so.
that's great, thank you. I appreciate your support. And if I could just spend a few minutes on the bylaws that we might expect to see in May.
Yes,
So I'm going to turn that over to Jasmine.
Thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate it. And thank you for presenting the budget. That was spectacular. And I'm really looking forward to all of the activities and objectives we have planned for the next 2 years. I think it's going to be a very good years for Dover. So
Well, we know you'll be very busy.
that's the way I love it. Don't ever let it change. So we have 4 proposed or 4 submitted warrant articles for this annual town meeting. Some of these were some initiatives that we noticed that we needed, such as the small and medium scale solar bylaw, and some of them were things that were recommended. So the first one that we worked on that we submitted is the construction hours bylaw. This is a bylaw that will prohibit the large scale construction of projects, anything outside of a homeowner fixing anything on their own property between certain hours of the day during certain days of the week. This was created at the request of the building inspector, as he's received several complaints from several citizens that construction is being obnoxious, extending beyond reasonable hours, interrupting daily lives. There have been a lot of complaints made to the police department, and without having any bylaws in place, there's nothing for the building department or the police department to enforce as far as noise and disturbance goes that's associated with construction. So we propose a general bylaw that will require a 50% vote just to restrict the hours of major construction during the week and the weekend. So not to completely eliminate it, just to keep it within reasonable hours to give residents of Dover some peace and quiet throughout their evening and their weekends. Does anybody have any questions on that one?
Would this also apply to chainsaws and wood chippers and whatnot? We had a situation where the people across the street from us had a crew in there that started at 10 minutes to 7 in the morning.
At this time, it does not include any type of landscaping materials or tools. It only applies to construction equipment and tools. So that wouldn't fall under this particular bylaw. We were really trying to address the noise created from the actual act of construction instead of addressing noise in general as itself, because that could really get away from us very quickly. So we think it would be best to just focus on the activity.
Okay, thank
and
you.
how we can best keep that in check for the residents.
Jasmine,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that we started off calling it a construction and noise bylaw, and then we get citizens saying, well, what about the dogs and what about the roosters and this and that? And we quickly said, you know what, let's just take noise out of it for a moment and start in typical Dover ways, small little steps. So this is our first step for it. I'm sorry.
Jasmine, I have a question. Can you define what, quote, reasonable hours for major construction projects you're referring to during the week as well as the weekends? What are you proposing with greater specificity there?
The hours proposed are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Saturdays.
7 a.m.
Oh, 7 a.m. I'm sorry. 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. and on Saturdays, 9 a.m. until 1 p.m.
All right, so
Which are the strictest of the 10 towns that we've looked at.
But we will have a public hearing on this. This isn't definitive. This is just a submission for the warrant article that we would like to discuss this at a public hearing on February 26th. So we will have a public hearing for these articles that we can adjust and take in comments and review as necessary. So this is just to get the warrant on the article. It's a placeholder for that.
So that's on January 26th is the public hearing?
February 26th, I'm sorry.
And is there further definition on what would be a major project versus not major?
It is defined in the draft of the proposed bylaw, what we are considering to be construction materials and activities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll be getting a, once the town gets the town meeting website, web pages up, which should be shortly, we'll be posting all this onto the website so you can take a look.
Yes.
Excellent.
Have you had any consultations with local contractors to gather their inputs on the potential impacts of this bylaw or their work schedules? I mean, I know that we have several Dover resident contractors, and I know Center Street where I live is a particularly hot spot to build and renovate. And I recently had some masonry done. I don't think it was loud, but I didn't require pulling a permit for it. So I'm just curious to know if you've had the chance to do anything on that front.
We haven't had any input from developers at this point in time, but again, the public hearing process hasn't begun. So that will afford them the opportunity at that point to come and speak and give their opinions and point of view to the board to help make them make a decision for what finally goes ahead to town meeting for.
Right. I mean, I ask all this not to be difficult and
No,
certainly
not at
not
all.
trying to pose any roadblocks in your way, only because last year we had a similar incident with regard to sidewalks. And these are, I think, important questions that, because we as a committee have the discretion to then have further dialogue as to how this is, how we proceed. And I'm just trying to clarify a little bit more as to what measures might be in place to ensure that the residents then are going to be aware of the changes and that they can comply with them. So it sounds like the hearing is where you plan to address all of that.
Yes, absolutely. That is the main format in place for this discussion to happen. And so that's where everybody has the opportunity, once it's been published in the newspaper and that official process has begun. This was just a draft that was put together interiorly to be proposed for that, to begin that process, excuse me. So that's the process begins interiorly and then gets posted at the public hearing, and that's when we take all of that public input. There has been some public input up to this point in time for people who have attended the meetings regularly and follow the agenda, but there hasn't been an official public hearing for this particular warrant, this article yet at this time, obviously.
But I would say to Sarah and the other members of the committee that as soon as the current draft gets posted on the webpage, please don't wait till the public hearing. We would love to hear your thoughts, and just to give me a call or stop by or talk to Jasmine. We are taking input, and I would imagine that as soon as it gets published as part of the warrant, that we'll be hearing from contractors proactively as well.
Marty, I saw you were raising your hand before. Have you got a question still?
No, that was Sarah covered what I was looking for,
Okay.
was the hours and days.
Any other questions on this proposed bylaw? No, I think we've covered that now. So we've got 3 more to cover, right?
Yes. So the second one is as Carol already touched base on, is the small and medium scale solar bylaw. So this would apply to any solar units that are under the 250 megawatt units that are considered large scale solar. We have no guidelines or parameters around small or medium scale solar within Dover right now, which could open us up to potential conflicts. There's no opportunity for fire to perform appropriate reviews or building department to perform appropriate reviews. So we'd like to create this with the intention of setting reasonable expectations around the small and medium scale solar installations, so that way we may maintain best practices, especially surrounding safety requirements. The fire department in particular had mentioned it's very important that during the installation they get an opportunity to review it, because there have been instances where things have been incorrectly installed, the fire department wasn't aware, and people are falling through roofs at certain points or falling through structures trying to put out some of these fires associated with this. This particular bylaw would require a 2/3 vote, but I don't foresee there being any large parameter restrictions to this. The main focus to this will be safety, setbacks, just ensuring that best practices are being made. It's not meant to be restrictive in any way. It's just to keep everybody as safe as they possibly can be with this technology.
And is solar on roofs included or excluded from this?
We have not completely gotten to that point yet. I know the fire department would like to see it included in this because that is one of their major safety concerns, but we don't have the full formatted draft before the board at this time. So that's something that has yet to be determined.
Okay.
Are there any more questions on that one? Excellent.
There are actually people who are building systems that are nearly 250 megawatts as private ones. That's crazy.
It's incredible what you can construct. And if you have the space to do it, if you have
Yeah.
10 acres and you'll never see it, why wouldn't you? If you can get, off the grid or put money back into the grid, it's a wonderful investment. We just want people to be able to do it as safely as possible. So that way there's no risk to the homeowners, the abutters, the fire department, if they need to be there. Excellent. So the third warrant article we have submitted is for land use zoning. This is created, this is something that we are looking to create to provide options for more open space development within Dover, something that will help provide more tree cover for single family lots and other development within the town. Something that it has the opportunity to be its own zone or an overlay zone. We haven't gotten to that depth of this bylaw yet at this point, but the main intention is just to protect the open space and natural resources that we have within the community. And we are working with Jeff Lacey, a consultant, to help us create some type of regulations for that. We have some bylaws from other communities that we've pulled from that are very similar to what Dover is looking for as far as development and preservation goes. And it's something that I think will work favorably for developers as well as residents. I think it's something that everyone will look forward to because it will provide opportunities for each of them. And it's a bylaw that will require a 2/3 vote as well.
This is a project that we have funding for in our budget this year. But we also received a $10,000 grant from the state.
Yes, that Laura Harbottle had applied for. Yes.
And that grant expires at the end of June. So we do have to get the work done by the end of June. Yep.
Okay, any questions, further questions on that proposal? I guess once we've seen the drafts, we'll get a better sense of it all. So
yes,
we can hold fire until then.
Absolutely.
Friendly fire?
Does your
Of course.
Jasmine, does your draft include maybe insights into the process of working with Jeff Lacey as a consultant and how his expertise is contributing to the creation of these regulations for this potential zoning initiative?
Well, he's drafting regulations for us. So we've given him a few scenarios of other communities that we like these draft regulations or approved regulations that they have in place for this type of development in town, this open space preservation type of development. And he's looking at those against our housing production plan and our master plan and Dover's needs and creating draft language for us to be able to put forward to town meeting for approval.
Gotcha. Sorry, I'm just not familiar with who he is. So I was specifically wondering about the initiative and how it addresses protecting natural resources within our community and how the environmental impacts and assessments might be considered.
Yes, he's got a very in-depth background. I'm sorry, Carol, forgive me. I forget his company's name.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It could be
off the top of my head.
Associates or whatever. He's one of the top 2 natural resource, open space, conservation, development, low impact housing consultant in the state, in the Commonwealth. And we've been working with him informally. I have emails going back 6 or 7 years from him. It's sort of like when you have a housing issue on 40B, you contact Judy Barrett. And when you're working on this type of natural resource protection zoning, you contact Jeff Lacey.
Thank you both.
Are there any other questions on that one?
I think
Sorry.
not.
And Jeff Lacey's from Rural Planning Associates. Sorry, I just looked him up. That's the company he's with. So the final one that we have proposed is for the accessory dwelling units that we just approved, that were just approved by the Attorney General. There's a potential that we may need to revise the language of the existing accessory dwelling unit bylaw. We are in conversations with town council at this time to see if it's something that requires a town meeting vote to change, or if the existing language as it is suitable for our needs. If it's something that they feel will need to be amended, we'll have to go to town meeting with that language, and it will require a 2/3 vote to amend that.
Okay, and that's the result of comments from the state, is that?
No.
That was actually the state had no comments. They had approved it and it passed. It was actually a comment from our town engineer, Mike Angieri, who had caught it's a bit of minutia in the language that can prove to be problematic, where we specifically state that Board of Health approval is required for attached accessory dwelling units, and we neglected to address detached accessory dwelling units. So
Okay.
that language may leave us exposed to Board of Health approval not technically being required for detached units. So it's a little, it might have created a loophole.
Okay.
We're trying to avoid.
Okay, that's
So we've actually asked town council to get back to us by Friday, which is the close of the warrant, so that we can
Right.
take it off, then it's a lot easier to do. It might be something where we can we're in the midst of doing regulations that support the bylaw. We might be able to just clarify in the regulation, but we just need Nina to let us know.
Okay, great. So we might have 3 and we might have 4 then being proposed to town meeting.
Yes.
Great.
Or 1.
Okay, fair enough. So any other questions of Jasmine and or Carol on planning board issues? Then I think we're done.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. And again, as these things get posted, we'd love to hear from you. Way before, the more we hear from folks before the February 26th public hearing, the better the draft will be that gets presented to the citizens on the 26th of February. So your input is really valuable. So we look forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me go first. I'm sorry, Bethany, I hope this wasn't too inconvenient for you.
Not at all.
Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. Nice
It
to
was-
meet you all.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob.
Carol, it was for me.
Huh?
And we
It was
welcome Rob Andrews, a
My
stranger to
goodness,
the Warrant
Mr.
Committee.
Andrews.
Carol, it was inconvenient for me to have
It
to
was-
listen to all of that. I'm just kidding.
You're on too? Oh, are you on for the library as well? You're there to support Bethany?
I'm here for moral support for the
There you
library,
go.
yes.
That's great. You're lucky, Bethany.
I know it too.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Well, Bethany, we'll throw the floor over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here, for being so attentive to all of the questions coming up in the budgets. And I know I had sent along our budget documents. I do have some additional views of it, if that would help anyone as we're going through. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to screen share some other views of the budget requests that we've put in. I think the biggest summary I can give of the budget requests that we've put in is that it's boring. There is not much here that gets out of the norm. The biggest driver of the library's budget is salaries and wages. We have a team of 14 exceptional staff members at the library who present hundreds and hundreds of programs every year, who circulate thousands of materials, and who keep the library running efficiently and with incredible warmth. So the salary request that we've put in is right in line with the select board's guidelines for the salary increases. We're following all of the recommendations for utility increases. We have added a little bit into the data processing line that follows actual expenses. Our data processing line covers all of the staff side software that keeps the library running smoothly. That includes our online events registration and calendaring, as well as our meeting room booking. It covers some staff side databases that make sure we're able to take other reservations. So that's been increased a little bit. We are also expecting to see a small increase in our website hosting fees. We have a brand new website that is going to launch any day now. We are right at the very end of this. That project was paid for with trust funds. It did not come from the municipal budget. And I think that's the second big point that I would make about the library's budget request, which is that we have a number of other funding sources that really generously support major functions of the library. So for example, our Friends group pays for all of our programming and all of our museum passes. Last year, that came to about $27,000. And in total, we ended up using about $53,000 from non-municipal sources in order to keep library services humming. Some of those were capital expenses. Some of those included the website projects. So we're very cognizant of finding ways to make sure that what's in the municipal budget is really tailored to what the town can support and can contribute to. I'm trying to think if there are any other particular numbers that are really worth highlighting. The one that comes to mind is always the 15% materials budget fee. So if you're looking at that, we consistently set that to 15% of municipally appropriated funds. Dover's minimum materials expenditure requirement in order to retain state accreditation is 15%. So making sure that we meet that benchmark, and anything above and beyond is gravy, and ensures that not just the Dovertown Library, but the entire network and the entire state's worth of resources are available to Dover residents. Losing accreditation would mean losing all of that access. So it's really critical to ensure that that stays at 15%. That does mean that salary expenses affect that 15% line because it's auto-calculated. Any increase there will affect an increase in the materials budget as well. Otherwise, we've done our absolute best to make sure that all of the lines are level funded or as close to that as we can. And in a few cases, we've been able to reduce slightly. We've been really mindful of looking at office expenses. We've been very careful about not increasing our professional development budget. It's meeting our needs at this point, so we're happy to keep it where it is. And one big change you'll see is that last year we requested a $6,500 capital outlay for ADA automated doors on the lower entrance. That project is underway, and we're not requesting a comparable capital outlay this year. That's the big picture in a nutshell. I am happy to go over any details if you have questions, happy to talk about what it is the library is doing in the community. It was really interesting to hear the planning board talking about the town's master plan. The library is currently working on our independent strategic plan. And yes, all of those sentiments were hitting home. The value of understanding the community, of understanding how the library fits into that, and looking for all the gaps and opportunities for making sure that our services are meeting community needs and exceeding them. We are part of an incredible network of libraries. So we're surrounded by innovation, creative peers, and it's wonderful to be able to be part of such a robust group and to contribute in our way to make sure that it is bringing something new and interesting to the network. It's interesting, we are the smallest, second smallest community in the Minuteman Library Network, but we bring really big ideas to that network. We pioneered Library of Things 10 years ago before anyone else thought that might be interesting, and we really continue to lead the pack. It's a lot of fun to be in a community where we can do that kind of really leading work. And I'm going to open it to questions at this point if folks have things they'd like to dig into, questions about how the library's working.
I think you're on mute, Kim.
Thank you, Marty. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions?
Bethany, do you anticipate that the opening of the community center is going to have any impact on the library?
We anticipate it's going to have some impact. That was one of the biggest questions that we asked on the recent townwide survey for our strategic plan. And the biggest answer we got back was, we're not sure. We're not sure how we're going to use the community center differently from the library. It is going to have an impact. I'm really looking forward to the collaboration opportunities. I'm looking forward to seeing how the two can complement each other so that we're not fighting over the same types of activities. We're not, vying for the same limited audience of people who are interested, but that rather we're really collaborating, working together, and playing to each other's strengths. It just remains to be seen exactly what that's going to look like.
In that vein, you mentioned your software for scheduling rooms. Is there any way to coordinate that kind of thing with the community center?
That's a really interesting question. The software that we're using is very, very much tailored to libraries, but that doesn't mean that changes or additions would be impossible. We haven't had anyone approach us to talk about that. I would be open to the conversation.
Bethany, one of the reports that you gave us was one entitled Library Budget Context and Comparisons.
Yes.
And I'm interested in the utilities line items. The number for FY24 was way down in terms of actuals. Is that simply just a timing issue, or why is have we suddenly gone from a budget of 52,000 and only having $12,000 in expenses there?
We were only a couple months into FY24, so that was current expenses.
Oh, this is for FY24
as a publication. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do expect to use all of the utilities budget this year.
Okay, so those numbers are really just preliminary then.
Yes, they're just showing where are we at this point in the year.
Could you expand a little bit on how you decide when to go to the Friends for money and how you decide when you go to us for money?
Sure. The Friends have really laid out their priorities. So they give money to the library with the hopes of those funds being used in pretty specific ways. One is definitely programming. So making sure all of the events are covered, whether that's a performer that we hire, whether that's craft supplies that the kids are using on Monday afternoons, whether that is, really anything involved in an event at the library. That's a big piece of what the Friends are eager to support. The other piece is the museum passes. So making sure that all of the passes that are available to provide either discounted or free admission to, I'm trying to remember how many we have at this point. It's a pretty decent chunk, maybe 20 or so museums in the area. That's another one of their big priorities. They also like to support hospitality at the library. So if you've been in the building anytime in the last handful of years, there is coffee available on both floors. Everyone is free to grab a cup and enjoy while they're in the building. The just small, really nice touches, buttermints at the front desk, making sure there are sanitary supplies in the bathrooms, things that go above and beyond normal services. All of those are really well within what the Friends appreciate supporting. And then we will go to them sometimes to ask if there's anything else that we could add to the budget. So for example, talking about the calendar system and the room reservation system, when we brought that on midway through the last fiscal year, I went to the Friends to ask if they would support it for that first portion of time before we could wrap it into the municipal budgets. And that was something that they were willing to support so that we didn't have this extra expense in the municipal budget that was going to throw off numbers for future years. There are other ways that we look at that as well. Some capital expenses, looking at shelving or furniture or toys in the children's room, things that don't fit well into the municipal categories. They're not things that circulate, so they're not part of the materials expenditure. The things that, they go above and beyond kind of that standard level of service. So we think pretty carefully about that. And then, trying to use state aid funds kind of the same way. I use state aid funds a lot for, again, capital expenses with shelving, with furniture. We bought new stools for the makerspace and one of the video game stations. So trying to pull from those state aid or those Friends funds to spruce up the environment. We did carpet cleaning this year, which was also not budgeted for. That came out of state aid as well. So making sure we're thinking carefully about where to request things when unexpected expenses come up. But making sure that within the budget lines, we're intentional about what those budget lines mean. That if it says it's for meetings and travel reimbursement, that's what we're using it for. If it says it's for circulating materials, that's what we use it for. And then when we go outside those parameters, looking at the Friends and the trust funds and state aid.
Great.
What proportion of the town's residents actually use the library on a regular basis?
That's a great question. I pulled that one up. We were looking at it with the strategic plan. Let me pull this one up. So just under half of town residents are cardholders, and just under half of those residents are active users, which puts us right in line with all of our peers. Every library pretty much in the network sees a very similar pattern of usage. So we're in good standing there.
Thank you.
Bethany, I know last year you at least contemplated reallocating some employee hours that would have transitioned some employees from part-time to full-time employees, and I know you pulled that request back. I'm assuming that's doesn't seem like that's in the plan for this year, but is that still in the back of your mind, or something that you think would add efficiencies to the library, or are you thinking it might be something you'd be looking to do in the future?
That conversation's really shifted much more to HR, kind of having a different type of conversation around employee compensation in general. Is there a way to offer part-time employees who don't meet that 1,000-hour-a-year threshold something? Is there a way to offer sick time? Is there a way to offer prorated paid time off? Things that don't get into the levels of spending that are involved with insurance or pensions, but the things that are much lower on that budget level. The conversations, they haven't made a lot of progress, but they're out there. And I think that's the more reasonable way through the question right now, instead of trying to create 20+ hour positions.
Right. I think that puts many members of the Warrant Committee into a bit of a bind, because personally, we feel it's a little bit unfair to keep people at 19 hours simply because there's a budgetary advantage to the town for doing that, when that has real implications for real people in terms of their ability to live. So we sort of understand that situation, and I wouldn't like to go so far as to say that we'd look at some of those a little bit more favorably if they turned out to be absolute necessities, and feel a little concerned that we don't set a system up in town that has large numbers of people on 19 hours just because we're trying to save on benefits, expenses, and so on.
I appreciate that. And I do hope that these conversations can happen and move forward and really be considered seriously, while also recognizing significant budgetary impacts. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
So Cam, if you give us guidance that we can change the way we do
I'm not giving you
personnel,
guidance. I'm just saying we might look at it a little bit more favorably.
because I'm sure that many of the wonderful librarians would love to have benefits. So we're just trying to follow guidance as the trustees who are responsible for the fiscal responsibility of the library. We try to follow the Warrant guidance very clearly. So please,
thank you.
Feel free to elaborate on your
following
guidance
it, Rob.
so that we can adjust.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment too. Okay, I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else have more questions of Bethany and or Rob? Then I think
it's really great to see all your faces, just as an aside.
And you notice I've got even less hair than I had before.
I got a hat on.
Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it too. And I know the trustees have been really supportive of the library. I want to echo what Rob is saying. We try to be so mindful of the guidance coming out. We really want to make sure we're fitting in with what the town is trying to accomplish, what these goals are. And I think we're in really good shape to accomplish a lot with what we have. So thank you for the support.
Excellent. Thank you. You're welcome, of course, to stay if you desire, but you're also equally welcome to leave now.
Thank you. I hear violin practicing going on downstairs. I might need to go intervene. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye now. We did have Melissa for a while, but it seems like we've lost her again, so that's unfortunate. I guess we move on now to the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any comments on those minutes? Any suggestions for change?
Peter, in the first paragraph, Mr. Deloney believes this is warranted by the steady increase in outdoor programs that began with the COVID shutdown. I actually don't think their numbers show that. Their numbers in 2010 or 2011 were significantly higher than, or in 2019 were higher and then went down. They went up from 2010 to 2019 and then went down during the pandemic. What I think we just, what if we just said that the anticipated increases in programming with the opening of the clinic community center or something like that?
Okay, I can simplify it.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments on it? Then do I hear a motion?
Motion. Sorry.
Nope.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as with the modifications that we just talked about.
Okay, seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. So I'll quickly go through the votes. Woody?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Marty?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Janet?
I was absent, so I guess I'm supposed to abstain, right?
Right, I guess so. That would make sense. And Melissa? I'm not sure whether you're coming or going, Melissa, so let me know. And I approve the minutes as well, so I think we can accept those minutes as done. In terms of, do we have any liaison updates from anybody? I guess Woody and I met with Dan Siegel, who's the head of the Sherborne Advisory Committee, their Warrant Committee, yesterday, was it, or the day before?
Monday.
To discuss, well, really to focus on the school's regional budgets, which is where we have to work with Sherborne on reaching a school budget. So we had a long chat with Dan on ways in which we can cooperate, and we really didn't agree on anything substantive yesterday, other than we're both willing and eager to find ways in which, by cooperating, we can save money in both towns. And so any initiatives that might enable us to do that is something we would try and pursue. So, for example, if some department is seeking to, maybe one of the school Chickering or whatever is seeking to hire some part-time staff, whether we can mix and match with Sherborne so that they can maybe make that into a full-time position that's shared between both places. So it's those sorts of compromises that we're looking for. But Dan was certainly very eager to cooperate in any way he sees fit. Robin, you have a question?
So the school does a lot of sharing of resources, so
They
one
do
of the
already,
things,
yes.
one of the things you should have Dawn maybe focus on is how they go about that. I mean, their whole special education programs, where they have teachers at the one school focusing on one kind of a learning disability and teachers at another on another, and then the kids go to either school. So I think it would be great to have Dawn maybe give a couple of examples of how they're going about doing that already.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are other opportunities as well.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
think that was
the tricky part about, as you know, the regional school budget is at the end of the day, it's the enrollment that drives the cost to the town.
right.
And, you know, I remember being chair of the regional school committee and Sherborne telling me they couldn't afford the costs. But, you know, we had to decrease the overall budget. It's just because their enrollment went up.
Right.
So, you know, so you face that additional challenge with the regional school.
Right, right. And we were certainly aware that the schools are sharing resources in that fashion, Robin. I used, that was a pretty poor example of mine,
Okay.
but it's oriented more towards trying to find ways as we move forward where we can work together to save both towns money, I think is
So more like looking at opportunities for regionalization for services. Okay.
right, exactly. And the other thing, Dan is actually meeting with Dawn this week with specific questions, and I think that Woody and I will be meeting with her fairly soon as well to raise any issues that we might have. And then we agreed to get back together with Dan to see if we can come up with a common position on that budget. So he's certainly very willing to cooperate in any way he can. Okay. Woody, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's it. They're clearly feeling pressure around their budget.
Right. And I think we both sort of recognize that their budgetary pressures may be of a different source than ours, but we're also entering a period of tight budgets given the high capital and anticipated capital expenses over the next few years. So I think we're both eager to try and find ways in which we can manage what funds we have as efficiently as possible. Yeah. Okay. What else? Oh, actually, I had a meeting with Michael Blanchard a couple of weeks back to discuss general issues of the budget, and that was together with Barry Goldman from the Capital Budget Committee, and we got to discussing how towns are evaluated, how do they get to their AAA ratings and so on. And we got a copy from Moody's of their rating strategies. And that document I have posted to the Common website. So if anybody has a geeky interest in understanding how Moody's gives us a AAA rating, you might want to have a look at that. I think it might be instructive. I haven't yet had a chance to read it myself, but it might well be instructive as to some of the ways we can maintain a good rating while meeting our budgetary challenges.
Hey, Cam, can I ask a question on that?
You certainly can.
Who
Anytime.
at the town monitors that? Is there Is it this group, the warrant committee, or is it the town treasurer that monitors the various metrics that you need to have to maintain that rating?
I think that's more the treasurer and the finance director, right, Robin?
That's correct. No, the Warrant Committee's role is purely advisory,
And review, yeah.
right? So,
I guess I was coming at it from the standpoint, ultimately, there's a recommendation from this committee with respect to the budget. And in that budget, there are certain expenditures, or maybe it's just the capital expenditures and the debt burden that might be impacted by that.
right, which is why it's imperative not to just focus on 1 year at a time, because you're going to have some years where expenditures are higher. And that was the whole philosophy behind the creating reserves for free cash, so that we would be looking more long-term, more strategically at the town's finances, with the idea that we really needed to focus on always staying within the levy, because that's how, you know, a lot of Sherborne's budget pressures are, because they didn't stay within the levy, and they're in a much better shape than they were many years ago, but all their debt was excluded, so they would maximize the levy and then do debt exclusions over that. So when we started putting together some of the strategic planning financial tools, we said, okay, how can we stay within the levy? And we projected the tax levy growing at 2.5%. And then we said, all right, well, we're returning back all this our free cash is growing at a rate much faster than it should. Why is that? And we said one of the tools in our toolbox we could use is make sure we don't even get to the maximum levy point. So to always come in under the levy. And those are the types of things we've been trying to do, you know, and I would be happy if, you know, to spend some time with you and just kind of go over some of this, the planning that we're trying to do to maintain good fiscal discipline in Dover. You know, the last couple of years, I think it seems as though we're out of control, but part of the issue is we deferred replacing things. And so at some point you have to pay the piper, and that's where we are right now. So we need to make sure that in the future we've saved for these replacements that we know are going to be coming down the pike.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting actually, Robin, if you maybe could at one of our meetings give a sort of an overview of the fiscal efforts we've been going to try and maintain that. I think that would help the newer members in particular
Okay.
get understanding on that. So yes, possibly even at our next meeting, that would be useful. The other question that I have is that we need to start increasing those reserve funds so that they actually reflect what our anticipated expenses are going to be, and that's something that we really need to work on, I suspect, this year too, right?
Right, and I mean, that's why it gets so critical to pull the whole budget together, understand where we are from a macro standpoint. And I know I need to spend some time with Carl. I know we have that. It's really, you know, I recognize that part of your diligence efforts are to listen to what each committee wants or is looking for. But at the end of the day, we have to pull everything together and then say, can we really afford this or not?
Right.
You know, and then
Right.
kind of go back and begin to see where we potentially have some savings.
Right. No, that's very real. I agree with you there.
Right. You know, and it's kind of interesting because as I listen to the presentations, I realize that everybody's asking for things in a vacuum. So there's a lot of headcount adds this year, and I think we really need to be able to justify all of them, especially in light of the fact that we really aren't sure how this community center is going to operate. So I would prefer, and this is just my own personal opinion, it's not the opinion of the Board of Selectmen. I think what we really need to look at is maybe take small steps towards staffing until we really understand how this building is going to operate. You know, Bethany's comment about the library and the community center, you know, it's all part of community programming for the same community. So there should be coordination between the various silos. So we need to think about, you know, so in my mind, this is how this would be the function of that director,
Right, right.
you know, to coordinate all of these groups.
So when Bob was putting quite a deal of pressure on us to speed up the whole budgeting process, I had a conversation with Michael, and he suggested ways in which we could restructure the way we do things in the Warrant Committee, so that we actually reduce the amount of meetings that we have with individual departments and try and get through those very quickly at the front end of the process, so that we really get a quick overview of how everything is working, and then have the opportunity to focus much more on the review elements of it, rather than just finding out what they're really asking for.
Right, you know, I really think that could work, because you have the guidance and then you have to look at the big drivers in a given year.
Yeah.
And you know, this year it's $70,000 in professional services for the planning board. You know, there's a whole bunch of headcount requests. I know
Right.
that.
Yep.
So
and we've got a lot of capital requests as well, so
right.
that's adding to it.
Robin, do you anticipate there'll be clarity about hail by the time town meeting occurs?
So, no. You know, we don't have a CR with hail, and until you have that a CR in place, you know, what are people voting on, right? So we really need an agreed to conservation restriction. So that is critical path to make the value proposition, and we don't have that yet.
So I heard an interesting proposition the other day on that, Robin, was the suggestion that maybe we could get some water rights from Hale in exchange for this special conservation restriction, so that given that Westwood seems to have withdrawn from the whole notion of it, the idea at the moment seems to be that Hale wants to just ask Dover to provide the funds, and that they'll try and make up any difference through fundraising. But it may well be worth having a discussion on them about giving exclusive rights to some portion of the water in Hale for town needs.
So, you know, the negotiations are being done in executive sessions so that
I
we're
understand
not
that.
compromised. So, you know, many of the issues that are raised have been discussed, but again, it's a negotiation.
Yeah, right.
And I, you know, Westwood and Hale are at an impasse. So neither side is willing to compromise on a position that they're in.
Right, right.
So so Westwood didn't pull out. They're
They're just not compromising.
it's an input, it's an
Yeah,
input.
yeah,
So so to Woody's question, we're almost back to square one
right, right,
because the CR that was negotiated was reflective of two towns participating in it.
right.
So, and Woody, the Board of Selectmen have always said, and I don't think this has changed, that we will always bring Hale to a special town meeting.
Right.
Because it's too big of an issue for the town.
Yep. Okay, so we'll just have to hold fire on that, and it might come up this year, or it might not.
It will, well, we have 12 months. If I were a betting person, I'd say it will come up this year. When, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So now we're on to other business. Does anybody else have any other issues that they want to raise for us to discuss this evening? Okay, then the only thing to discuss then is the next meeting, planned for next Wednesday, where we'll be discussing Chickering, the Chickering budget and the Minuteman budget, plus reviews of warrant articles. So the warrant closes on Friday, so we'll have a clear picture of what the warrants are going to be for this upcoming town meeting, and hopefully we'll have a clear summary so we can at least get a clear sense of what those warrants are going to be.
So can I just ask you a process question? So at this point, have you been provided with a summary of the budgets? Like, do you?
Yes, and they're all on the shared drive.
Okay, so I just saw the individual budgets. I didn't kind of see a roll up of everything in there.
We haven't got the roll up from Michael yet. We had a first pass at it, which is in there, but it's not a complete.
Okay, all right. So it's just so that, as liaison, I want to coordinate back with Mike.
Right.
So I for me, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, it would be for
me. Let me talk to him a little bit.
Yeah.
So that you can at least look at what are the big drivers, even though you have placeholders in there.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to come up at the open hearing.
Yeah.
And hopefully Mike, or probably more likely Carl, can get the big model put together so that we can really see how it all comes together and what the out years are looking like.
Right.
Yeah, so let me work with Mike and Carl on that. I think that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I'm planning to reach out to Mike as well this week on that.
Because I hate to say that those budget reports, you look at them by department and it's like, yeah, so.
Yeah,
it took me a while to figure out that the planning board was asking for 70,000 more in capital, because the way the form was filled out, it said 90. In professional services, it said 90, which wasn't correct.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something to think about too. It might even help the departments to have a different kind of template for them to use.
Yeah, that's possible too.
Right.
Something we can discuss with Michael.
We could get John Quackenbush to create a master of an Excel spreadsheet. Holy moly.
John has created a spreadsheet for capital replacement, and it's impressive. I hope
it's very impressive. You need a very powerful computer to load the
thing. Yeah. Okay. Then if there isn't any other business to address, do I hear a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Peter. Do I have a second?
Second.
then can we take a vote by the hands? Or should we go around again individually? Looks like everybody is agreeing to leave. Melissa, I can't see your hand, but I'll assume you've got one. Sorry to drag you into this when you're obviously so busy at the moment, so I apologize. Okay, then it looks like we're ready to leave. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.